guys, I'm CG Smoothie, and the house always wins. Anyway, last weekend was the GMTK 2022 Game Jam, the largest game jam in itch.io history, with 22,000 people entering. That's flipping insane. That's more people than the 4 smallest countries in the world. 6,000 games were made, and Yours Smoothly was one of them. Cutting to the chase, the theme was
Roll of the dice.
In my mind, there was only one possible option of what game to build, and that was something that had to do with a cube using a Blender shape key to morph into a sphere. That's the first idea I came up with, and I ran with it. This was the first problem of this jam for me, and it's a problem I deal with in almost every jam I participate in. You see, GMTK and most other game devs have always said to start your development cycle by creating the minimum viable product, with very little art until the core mechanics are defined. A key example of a big name game that did this that we know about was Splatoon, where they have their notable tofu character stage of development before they even thought about art. I've never really done this. Almost immediately I've gone straight to art with every single game I've made except my first game, so I'm kind of the opposite way of other developers. It's never really hindered me that much because I usually had time to correct my course and fit in some mechanics. However, this was a 48-hour jam, my shortest game jam by 24 hours, beating my Ludum Dare of April 2021. To add, or I guess subtract onto that, this was my first time making a game while having a job to go to during the day, so I can actually pay for a living next year now that I'm out of high school. That, along with sleeping, cut my 48 hours down to about 24 without eating. So now was not the time to focus on art. However, my habits tend to stay habits until I learned the hard way that they were bad, so there was no stopping me. I made a dice block guide that could morph between a cube and a ball. This part was great and looks pretty good. Took me about an hour just to get it working, so it was definitely a unique idea too. A dice that can actually roll. I slapped a crudely drawn face onto it, and to my credit, at least I didn't spend long making that look better until I had actual levels. I threw together the only 3D animation needed in the game, the transition between ball to cube. I gotta say, the little overshoot and settling back into place does add charm to it. In my defense again, I tried to stop making art myself this time and get a beta map of a skate park model for level design and mechanic ideas, but they were not cheap. I guess I haven't really said my thought process yet. The game was going to be a puzzle platformer with 2 modes of getting around. A ball that could roll pretty fast and get around, but couldn't turn too easily, and a dice that could roll like those Tox boxes in Super Mario 64's Shifting Sandland. I think we all just learned that those have a name. The dice could turn faster, but it was also more chaotic to move and didn't go as fast. Basically just enough force to rotate itself, and that was it. Shifting between the 2 movement options would also add a bit of force and act as a jump, which could help with puzzle ideas. However, turning into the dice would also make you lose control until you hit the ground. After getting the main movement system, I decided I needed to have that skate park test area, but it had to fit into the dice theme. What are dice involved with? There's board games, but I felt like that would be overdone in this jam. I was just on a cruise last week, so why not make it themed around a casino? I could have playing cards and poker chips scattered around, and the end goal could be to land in a shot glass or a solo cup. So I made those obstacle assets and made a level border of a craps table, a common dice game in casinos. At this point, I made a decision that would eat up most of my time again, the art style. I had 2 options of the style I wanted, a more in-depth cartoon style that would look better than any other cartoon style I'd made before, and a realistic art style. I guess I wanted to push myself more without thinking of the consequences, because I went with the more realistic material path. See, the problem with this is that in Unity, to make things look better, you have to bake in the lighting. This means you have to spend hours baking said lighting. It basically cut my time in half again, and might look worse than what the cel-shaded style could have looked like. However, it did help me learn a lot about how to go about doing things like this, and those kind of things are always useful to pick up in a game jam experience. I used some polygon materials to make everything cohesive. Baking those lights took ages. Here's a neat little 200 times time-lapse of that process. After adding the solo cup in, I actually added some particle effects into my project for once. Oh, you don't know what Unity's particle system is? Well, it's a robust particle effect system where you can simulate moving liquids, smoke...
No! You can't just steal other people's jokes like that, son! I thought I raised you better than this. I guess I was wrong.
So, I added a confetti explosion that would happen once you would enter the cup, and that would turn off the player controls as well, signifying that the next level was about to start. Next, I imported the camera from my 3D Kirby demo. This came with its own problems that I didn't get to fixing until after submission. Then I added a minute loop of some big band jazz to fit a chaos of a casino. I think it sounds okay, but I should really invest in a better DAW so my game music actually sounds performed. MuseScore just ain't cutting it these days. To add a little bit of polish to my character, I made it so the ball form and dice form had different faces and would switch between them as well. Then I made a main menu to quit and go between levels. Originally I wanted 10 levels, but on the last day I had to cut it to 5 because I didn't have enough mechanics for more interesting levels. Because the menu was in a new scene, I had to make more lights. I also called it Use Your Casinoggin because it's become a trend for me to use a bad pun or alliteration in my game titles. I made my test scene into a tutorial level and added little help signs so players would understand how to control the player. Then I created the 4 other levels, which I won't spoil for you if you plan on playing the game. In a couple of the levels, I added a little secret, so let me know if you can find all of them. To add a bit of polish to the game before submission, I added some adaptive noise to both the cube and ball forms with a rolling sound effect and a dice clack noise whenever one of the faces of the dice hit an object. I also added some more particles to follow the player when they were rolling and to explode whenever they hopped and changed forms. I ended up submitting a little less than 10 minutes before the deadline. However, I wasn't done. In the comments and the Discord, people kept telling me of issues of the camera system that I already knew about, and I felt like that was the main thing holding my game back. Because of the Cinemachine collider, the camera kept bumping into cards and zooming in and making it virtually unplayable. After submission, I was able to fix this. I took off the Cinemachine collider, but you couldn't see the player when it was behind something anymore. That was still a huge problem. So I upgraded the project to the Universal Render pipeline, and finally, for the first time, actually created my own shaders. If I actually did this cel-shaded art style, I might have had time to do this before submission, but whatever. I added a dithered out silhouette for whenever the dice was behind something, and just for user accessibility, I added a second camera option for full top-down gameplay. I added that to the main menu and added a pause menu so you could actually close out of the game without beating all the levels. Now that I'd fixed the camera problems and added some ease of accessibility, I'm actually kind of proud with how this turned out. I can't upload the new build until next week when the voting period is over, but please check that out when it's up. If you participated in the GMTK Jam, I would love a rating. Check out my other itch games while you're at it. Thank you for the feedback in my Discord that helped me know some other problems. If you want to join that, links are in the description. With that, if you like this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe and share it with your friends. It always helps. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!